Okay folks, round of the week. We are being submerged with inquiries from two areas. Tenants of houses and also from landlords. Now the tenants are complaining about damp problems. They're saying they've got mould and they've got damp problems, and they're having to go to local councils to complain, and then the council goes to the landlord. In other cases we're getting landlords coming directly to us because they actually know they've got a problem and they are being given damp reports by PCA members, by damp wallies, who are telling them that they've got to injection damp proof. And in every case we seem to be coming down to the fact that these buildings, actually there's not a lot wrong with them. There may be a few issues with penetrating damp, high ground levels or whatever, but for the most part it comes down to ventilation. And this particular rant was kicked off by an email that I received yesterday. And we've got a complaint here from Birmingham City Council, and I haven't yet actually seen the building, but I know what the problem is going to be. The environmental health people in Birmingham City Council have said, amongst other things, our cause of concern is damp present on the ground floor. In the damp report, as also seen in our inspection, dampness is being caused on the ground floor by external bridging of the damp course and rising damp. This is nothing to do with the tenant's behaviour. I therefore advise that remedial damp proofing is taken place, which includes the hacking off and replastering of affected plaster and other damp proofing work that's detailed here. Bottom line is, none of this is needed. And what it is telling me is that Birmingham City Council's people have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. They don't understand what's going on. So, to that end, I'm going to show you a little thing that I was given recently from somebody who is an environmental health officer, and he said to me, you know, we have a major issue in this industry. Chartered Institute of Environmental Health. Okay, here's their logo. This is the kind of rubbish that they are throwing out to their members. This is a course that they ran, teaching their inspectors on what to do and how to understand damp in buildings. And this is how bad it gets if the people doing the inspections are as stupid as this, and this is what they're being taught. How is anything ever going to improve? And here we have causes of damp proofing. And there's a nice little picture in here which says, rising damp around the external perimeter of the building is evidence of a missing damp proof course. Really? It's an old building, dear. It never had a damp proof course. Rising damp is apparently identified by a pattern of dampness, staining and mould growth on the lower areas of the walls. Typically damp will be seen up to a metre above ground level. Really? Has anybody actually considered whether rising damp exists, or that this might actually be condensation related? Hello? So there's a little picture of, apparently, with no proper diagnosis, a building that might have some rising damp in it. Then they go on, and on the very next page are remedial actions. Okay, so what we have to do now, apparently, it is necessary to cut out and replace the defective portion. And what we're going to do is drill holes at regular intervals around the perimeter of the building, just above external ground level, and a chemical is injected under pressure. So there we go, we got another, and remember, this is the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health. Hello, these people really know what they're talking about. So there you go, nice little picture of damp proofing. Then they're suggesting that actually, if this isn't possible, you could decide to install our old friend some porous tubes, which we know are a complete fraud. These are what are known as Nappen tubes. This is Holland damp proofing, or oh, I don't know what they call it, but there's loads of different names for these stupid things. They've all been shown as total fraud. So we're going to cut some holes in the wall now, and we're going to put these stupid tubes in. But you know what? It gets better. Good old Chartered Institute of Environmental Health are now saying we can put an electronic barrier in. There's another way of doing it. We can actually put these little things. So we're going to have an electric wire around the building, and that's going to make the damp go away as well. Great. So the final little bit here is remedial actions, damp proofing. Where a damp-proof membrane is missing, it is sometimes possible to apply a sealing compound or fix a polythene damp-proofing membrane on top of a concrete ground floor slab. But of course, if you've got a slightly damp ground floor slab out of concrete, actually it's usually necessary to replace the entire floor. Why? Then the last little bit, they say non-traditional construction will require specialist advice of a damp proofing company. So, Chartered Institute of Environmental Health really are not doing very well up until this point in time, and I am absolutely staggered that these poor guys, these professional guys, the people who are employed by councils and who are environmental health officers, are being fed this utter bullshit. And some of these guys are so concerned that they're feeding this sort of thing to me because they know that it's wrong. I'm not calling them idiots. They are sufficiently well informed that they know that it's wrong, but what they're trying to do is make me make the point to you, the public and everybody else, that actually the institutes themselves are teaching the wrong thing. And here's another one in the same course. We have remedial actions. Oh, we can have positive input ventilation. And this really makes my blood boil. So we have the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health telling people that you're going to install a whole house positive input ventilation system which takes air from a loft space, which is generally warmer than external air, and constantly pushed into a property to change the air and stop formation of condensation. Where is the wettest air in the building? Up there in the loft space. Water rises. That's the only rising damp I know about. Water is the lightest gas in the air. So all of the water that is produced in your building is going to end up in the loft space. And it is why we constantly, when we're doing surveys, we check the loft space and we look at loft ventilation. And if we've got a warm loft, it is generally stuffed tight with water vapour, with condensation streaming down the underside of the tiles and the timber. If it is a cold loft space, it is also usually a very well ventilated one. So positive input ventilation is a complete load of codswallop, and you never should be using it because it's taking that damp, warm air from the loft and forcing it back down into the house where it is going to cause even more problems. So again, well done, Chartered Institute of Environmental Health. You are screwing up big time. Now, I think there's one final thing here. Yeah, in this same course, there is a case history, and it's actually a case history which apparently is something to do with the BRE, which is a building research establishment, and they're quoting a BRE case history on a damp, mouldy, horrible house. So here we have a nice photograph of an external toilet with mould everywhere and cold, damp walls. And then in the kitchen there is a statement, and it says there is evidence of rising dampness to one wall in the kitchen. The wall is damp to the touch and the plasterwork has started to perish. Great. And on the wall, it's not a very good photograph, but you can see nicely loose, flaky wallpaper. Now they're stating the fact that there is rising damp. How the hell did some idiot actually diagnose that that is supposedly rising damp? Did somebody not actually look at it and say, okay, the wall's got impervious wallpaper on it with a load of paint on, it's trying to come off, which is why it's all bubbly, and if you just take the bloody wallpaper off, it'll probably dry the wall anyway. And failing that, you actually need to know whether there is gypsum plaster and cement on top of there, because it's probably already been damp proofed anyway, which is causing even more problems. But the fact is that we are in a presentation to professionals, environmental health professionals, who are being fed bullshit. And if you feed people bullshit, they begin to believe it. And this is the standard of education that most of the housing industry professionals now have in this country. And to be fair, it's not necessarily their fault. I've asked quite a few of them what equipment they're given to do their building surveys, and guess what? The only damn thing they're given is a ping pong meter, and they stick it in the wall and they diagnose rising damp, and that is as good as it gets. And I've stood up in court against people like that and blown them out of the water time and time again because they don't know what they're doing, and it's actually not their fault. But the fact is, no attention is being given to the real scientific reasons for the moisture within the building. And the moisture within the building is 99 times out of 100 is caused by people. And it's actually quite funny, I don't know if I can find it while I'm talking to you, but within this overall presentation, there is actually a really good little diagram, and it describes the sources of moisture in a building. And in amongst all the bullshit, they've actually given the real reasons for problems. And what I find so strange is that they know, but they don't perpetuate it. I'm struggling to find it, but it is a breakdown of the sources of moisture in a building. And actually that breakdown is very true, and it's got a little graph in it, and it says 90% of the water in a building comes from human beings. They've actually hit the problem on the head, but they're then getting sidelined by all of the training by the damp industry and the lack of joined up thinking in this industry. So they make a little statement in here somewhere that says, yeah, you know what, most of the sources of damp are from people, and the next biggest source is cooking. And it's very carefully laid out. They've actually hit the nail on the head. And they don't really get into the ventilation thing. They don't start to home in on the real solutions, which is heating and ventilation, and the combination of those two. So that's it really, that's my rant. It's, if you are in social housing, or if you are in a position where you are a tenant or you're an owner of a tenanted property, for heaven's sake, avoid environmental health. If you've got problems with the environmental health people, it might not actually be their fault. It's because they are being taught the biggest load of twaddle and rubbish that ever was invented, and we need to improve the education that they have. So if you've got a problem, get a hold of us and we will try and help. But don't take what the council tells you. So if you get a nasty letter, as our client did, from Birmingham City Council, telling him that he's got a wet house, but he needs to completely strip and damp proof, well, I'm sorry, Birmingham City Council, you don't. and we're going to sort out the problems in this house very simply. All it needs is better ventilation. So their statement that the tenant is causing the damp proof, the damp problem is the main real problem. This person here, the health officer, says the current tenants are not the sole cause of damp in the property. Well, I'm sorry, love, but you're wrong. They are. I've already looked at all the photographs, I've seen the data, and it is exactly what the problem is. Yes, there's a little bit of high ground level, but that is not causing a problem inside. But that's it. So don't worry about it. Don't believe these idiots in the councils. Come to us or go to somebody else similar to us who will hopefully have the ability and the technical skill to take them apart.